Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah wa salatu salam wa rasulullah. We continue reading from Imam Al-Ghazali's On Disciplining the Soul, Kitab Riyadat al-Nafs, translated by Timothy Winter, Abdul Hakim Murad. We're still reading the parts of the exposition of the signs of good character. We are at the bottom of page 68. We ended our last session by reading the hadith of the Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم من سرته حسنته وساءته سيئته فهو مؤمن. The man who is made joyful by his good deeds and melancholy by his transgressions is a believer. صححه الحاكم على وقال على شرط الشيخين. الحاكم rendered this hadith sound following the criteria of Al-Bukhari and Muslim. So we continue reading, and he said, meaning the Prophet ﷺ, it is not permissible for a believer to look at his brother in a manner that hurts him. The hadith is mursal, so the end of the this is from mursal. It means that the very last narrator in a hadith marfu', it means that the narrator would say the Prophet ﷺ said something like that. But in the mursal, he does not say this. It ends with a specific narrator without saying the Prophet ﷺ said so. It also means that it is, despite this aspect, it is part of the culture which could have in principle, in theory, its origin in a related tradition, and in itself as a text, as a manner, as an adab. This is, of course, very very true. One should not hurt other people, neither by a facial expression, a sign, verbal, ignoring the one who's in your presence, etc. I mean, there are so many things. One should not hurt other people. And obviously here it's for no reason. I mean, had your brother, of course, if you talk about the sisters, it's the same thing. Had your brother insisted on violating the law one way or the other, and by the law I mean the Sharia, then probably you would like to send a message. Okay? But don't hurt your brother by a facial expression that it will hurt him. You are being a snob, for example. It shows on you. Another hadith, the Prophet ﷺ said, a Muslim should not frighten another Muslim. Well, the chain of narrators is weak, it's da'if, but absolutely a Muslim should not frighten another Muslim. In fact, within the same society, or simply non-Muslims who are not for example, within the same society, for example, in Palestine, but the same thing in Jordan and Lebanon While this text speaks about not hurting or frightening a Muslim, one should not also frighten a fellow citizen who belongs to another religion when we talk about peaceful coexistence. The same thing applies to backbiting, the same thing applies to the protecting their property and honor. All this is part of what a Muslim should not do. And remember that even in times of uh, of colonialism, and the aim is to defend yourself. It's not to hurt others. Unfortunately, these voices that we are trying to convey are lost sometimes. Islam is very clear that even during the time of war, part of the war ethics in Islam is that you don't hurt children, you don't hurt women, you don't hurt the elderly, you leave monks, priests, and their monasteries in peace. No collective punishment. You don't kill an animal unless for food. You don't burn trees, uh, etc. So that's even during the time of conflict, mind you, if there is no conflict. The next hadith, when two people sit together, they are under a trust established by God. Therefore, let neither of them speak about his brother afterwards in a way which he would dislike. You don't convey the content. And there's another hadith. This particular one is also mursal. So there's another hadith about if someone speaks to you and he looks around as if, obviously, as if he does not want anybody to hear him. He is entrusting you with the information. You have no right uh, to speak about the content of that, we call it meeting, that gathering, whatever. A man summed up the signs of good character by saying, it is to be abundantly modest, to avoid harming others, to be righteous. Remember, these are signs of good character. It is to be abundantly modest, to avoid harming others, to be righteous, truthful in speech, and of little discourse. It is to do many things and slip up infrequently, to avoid excess, to be loyal, friendly, dignified, patient, grateful, satisfied, forbearing, charitable, chaste, and pitying, and not to curse or insult people, or to backbite or slander them, and to avoid hastiness, hatred, meanness, and jealousy, to be cheerful and kind, to love in brackets good, and hate in brackets evil for the sake of God, to be well pleased with Him, with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and to be angry for His sake. Such is the man of good character. وأن يكون أن يكون كثير الحياء قليل الأذى كثير الصلاح صدوق اللسان قليل الكلام كثير العمل قليل الزلل قليل الفضول to avoid excess, also not to be noisy, برا وصولا وقورا صبورا شكورا رضيا حليما رفيقا عفيفا شفيقا لا لعانا ولا سبابا does not curse, does not insult. ولا نماما ولا مغتابا ولا عجولا ولا حقودا ولا بخيلا ولا حسودا بشاشا هشاشا. I thought about the loyal, to be loyal. Inshallah, there will be loyalty. And for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, if you, in the Arabic, in the classical, in the original text, when you give someone the your hand and like a pledge of allegiance, like whether it's business or to be loyal, even to one's spouse, even politically, so social, uh, economic, the political. The idea is to be loyal, as long as there is nothing haram. Loyalty is a beautiful thing. It hurts if you betray the trust and the not the if there are greener pastures on the other side of the fence, in a sense, but in all three dimensions that I've just mentioned, it's not only the social aspect. Um, One should not really change loyalty at the prospect of, some material gain. That's poor. That's very poor. If people look at your CV and they say that you have changed your job very frequently, looking for the and your reason was simply the an increase, so you are not loyal. They might not employ you. If someone keeps getting married and divorcing really, then the prospect of marrying at one point becomes difficult. There is no loyalty. Someone who shifts his allegiance with every new trend, that's not loyalty. Back to a hadith of the Prophet ﷺ. He was once asked about the distinguishing marks of the believer and the hypocrite. Yesterday at Al-Aqsa Mosque, the theme of the khutbah was about the hypocrites. So the Prophet ﷺ replied, the believer's concern is for prayer, fasting, and worship, while the hypocrite, like an animal, is concerned with food and drink. The Imam al-Iraqi, in verifying this hadith, he could not find it in the books of hadith. He said, لم أجد له أصلا. But the believer is concerned about really doing something good for himself, for the family, for the society, but always also for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the hypocrite is not concerned with, by definition, the hypocrite has two faces, two states of the heart, or it's not two states of the heart. The state of the heart is not what he expresses before people. So verbally he might say something and his heart is harboring ill, envy, ill intentions. But it's not a hadith. Hatim al-Asam said, the believer is occupied with meditation and perseverance, while the hypocrite is occupied with greed and his hopes. Meditation and perseverance, it's really المؤمن مشغول بالفكر والعبر. So meditation is fine, pondering, thinking, الفكر. العبر is really the finding the raison d'être of something, like the wisdom in something, the message in something, the message in an event. It could be something from the annals of history. It could be a story mentioned in the Quran. It could be a hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. There must be ibra. So that's really, um, I would say, a translation that is more probably appropriate. The believer has despaired of everyone but God, while the hypocrite has set his hopes in everyone save him, save God. The believer feels safe from everyone except God, while the hypocrite fears not him, not God, but all others. The believer sets his religion before money, while the hypocrite sets money before his religion. The believer does good and weeps in, for fear that his action will not be accepted, for fear of being considered a hypocrite, for fear of uh, what will happen to him on the day of judgment. Still having these uh, hopes, and he trusts that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala inshallah will forgive him, forgive her sins. But still, while the hypocrite does evil and laughs, and that's very evil. That's very evil. To enjoy, people document today their war crimes and they laugh. They are on camera. They document their own war crimes and they laugh. The believer loves solitude and isolation, while the hypocrite loves company and assemblies. Unless you are in the company of people to advocate the good, to contribute to the for the betterment of the society, the, to teach, to educate, to guide, to be in the company of people who are, you are seeking knowledge, making dhikr, a circle of dhikr. But the believer loves solitude because the first thing is that you don't really commit sins associated with being with people. And the second thing, you would like to be on your own so that you'll still do something good with your time, pondering on the universe, remembering Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The hypocrite is probably is afraid in being in a state of solitude. He faces himself, and I'm sure he doesn't like that. The believer sows and fears that his crop will be spoiled, but the hypocrite uproots his crop and hopes to harvest it. The believer orders and prohibits for the sake of good government and succeeds in setting things right, while the hypocrite orders and prohibits for the sake of power and causes corruption. The finest thing through which good character, well, that was the end of the uh, quotation. The finest thing through which good character can be put to the test is steadfastness in the face of suffering and enduring the harshness of others. For whosoever complains of the bad character of another man has revealed the badness of his own character, since good character is to endure that which offends. Patience. And what you endure is just the perseverance in this case is a, inshallah, source of hasanat. A scholar from Al Azhar University decided at an old age one day to go with a group that belongs to the Tabligh and Da'wah, the Tablighis as we call them sometimes in English. He decided to go with them. And when he reflected on what happened to him and to them, really, he said this is the first time that he understood the meaning of like what the prophets, what the messengers had endured. Because the moment he is out, he usually teaches within the, when he teaches people at Al Azhar, teaches students there, they are respectful, polite, Islamically oriented, it's very spiritual, inshallah. All these good characters that you'll find in students at Al Azhar within Azhar. Even if one or two might slip, that's not the issue. But once he was on the street making dawah amongst the the everyday person, they got insulted, they got ridiculed, maybe worse than this. They spit on them. So that was the first time that. So he teaches, but as a feeling, that was the first time that he endured patience. And you don't know about the success of those tabligh. They are simple, uh, no political. They are apolitical, and they might read a hadith or two from Riyadh al-Salihin in the mosque, inviting people to join them. You don't know about their success. I know a story of someone in Australia. I know him personally. He was like an average person, and once they talked to him, he had like really it changed his life, and he says that he owed it to them. Of course, all this is the blessing from Allah Subhanahu wa Taala. Is they are guided. He was guided, inshallah, and that led to that led him to pursue Islamic education back in the Arab world. He got his BA back for his MA, and he had an attempt on to get a PhD. Well, he had, mashallah, so many children, and he was a professional in terms of his work. But don't underestimate what the those people going around and trying to rescue people in a sense, people who do not really go to the mosque, and subhanallah. So endurance, perseverance. So the finest thing through which good character can be put to the test is steadfastness in the face of suffering and enduring the harshness of others. For whosoever complains of the bad character of another man has revealed the badness of his own character, since good character is to endure that which offends. The Prophet ﷺ, God's emissary, may God bless him and grant him peace, was once walking with Anas radiallahu anh, when one of the nomads came up to him, to the Prophet ﷺ, and pulled violently at his thickly edged Najrani cloak. Anas said, I looked at the neck of God's emissary وسلم, and saw that the cloak's edge had left a mark there, that so roughly had it been pulled. Then the nomad said, O Muhammad, give me some of God's money which you have. And the emissary of God sallallahu alaihi wasallam turned to face him and laughed. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam laughed, though the behavior is absolutely inappropriate, very offensive. So the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam laughed, not laughed at him, simply laughed in his face, uh, and ordered that he be given some money. This hadith narrated by Al-Bukhari and Muslim, muttafaq alayh, very sound. And you can see how the Prophet ﷺ did not um, reprimand this nomad. A nomad, what do you expect from a nomad? Rough life, rough character. Um, and also the way they are described in the Quran is not flattering, really. Inshallah, this is enough for this session. We will continue from where we have just stopped with the story of this nomad until our next session, inshallah. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.